Good morning, everyone. In this class, we are going to discuss about a theoretical frame, that is environmental ethics. Okay, now we face these ethical questions every day. Okay, like, is it right to knowingly cause the extinction of a species for our convenience? Should we clear cut forests for human consumption? What is the true value of an unspoiled wilderness, and what entities should be considered for their own sake? What environmental obligations do we have to future generations? Okay, these are some daily life questions faced we in our daily life. Okay, related to the surrounding environment. Okay, now to navigate these questions, we can ask what has moral worth. Okay, introduce the core concept. Environmental ethics can be understood as an expanding circle of moral worth. Okay, we will explore this journey of perspective, moving from the most familiar to the most encompassing. Okay, in the center, humans, then sentient animals, then all life and ecosystems and the planet. Okay, all are interrelated and surrounded each other. Okay, circle 1, humans at the center, anthropocentrism. Okay, the concept of human at the center is known as anthropocentrism. Okay, that means human is the core concept of the ecosystem. Core idea, this position holds that humans are the most important or critical element. Okay, the environment's value is instrumental, defined by its utility or usefulness to people. The key term, conservation ethics. This practical approach argues for preserving the environment because it has extrinsic value for human welfare and future generations. It is often referred to as shallow ecology. Then nuance, thinkers distinguish between strong anthropocentrism, it is right for humans to be at the center, and weak anthropocentrism, reality can only be interpreted from a human point of view. Okay, this is circle 1, human at the center, known as anthropocentrism. Then circle 2, extending concern to sentient beings, that is biocentrism. This view extends moral worth to all beings that can feel pleasure and pain. It is a libertarian extension, echoing a civil liberty approach by extending rights to non-humans. Okay, it means all living beings can feel pleasure and pain. Okay, all living beings can feel pleasures, pains, and another emotional feelings. Okay, key thinker of this concept are Peter Singer argued. Okay, Peter Singer, and he argued that to not include non-human animals in the expanding circle of moral worth is to be guilty of speciesism, a prejudice similar to racism or sexism. Okay, in practice, this is the ethical foundation for many animal rights movement. Okay, many animal rights movement. Okay, this is the ethical foundation for many animal rights movement. That is biocentrism. Okay, extending concern to the sentient beings. Then circle 3, valuing all individuals' life. That is ecocentrism. What about plants, insects, or fungi? This view extends moral worth to all living things, regardless of consciousness or utility. Okay, the key concept is deep ecology. Okay, this is championed by thinkers like Arne Naess. This is the argument for intrinsic value of inherent worth of the environment. Okay, there is an intrinsic value, okay, or inherent worth of the environment, known as deep ecology. All life has a right to exist and flourish simply because it exists. Okay, another view of this concept, Andrew Brennan's eco-humanism. Humanism argues that all entities, animate and inanimate, have ethical worth purely on the basis of that they exist. Okay, this is the concept of ecocentrism. Okay, valuing all individual lives. Then circle 4, the entire system, that is ecoholism. The final leap, the focus moves from individuals, a single wolf, a single tree, to collective entities, species, ecosystems, and the entire planet. This is an ecological extension and specific reflection of the interdependence of all things. Key thinkers of this ecoholism are Aldo Leopold. Okay, he's the land ethic. He proposed the maxim, a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic component. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. Okay, another view, James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, views that planet is a unified holistic entity with its own independent ethical value. Okay, understanding our circle of concern is the first half of the puzzle. The second half is using a framework for reasoning. More philosophy offers three classic lenses or tools to help us think through our actions. Okay, consequences, duties, and character. First of all, consequences. The guiding question is that what action will produce the greatest good for the greatest number, also known as utilitarianism. Okay, how it works. This approach focuses on the outcomes of an action. An act is right if it maximizes well-being and reduces pain. For example, a consequentialist might support a dam if the clean energy benefits outweigh the ecological harm. Okay, instant practical and often data-driven, and challenges can be seen as instrumentalist toward nature. It can be hard to predict all consequences. Okay, then lens 2, that is focus on duties and rules. Okay, the guiding question is that what is our fundamental duty? Okay, what should we do? Are there rules we must allow or follow regardless of the consequences? Okay, how it works. This approach argues that actions are right or wrong based on adherence to principles or duties. Something with intrinsic value must be protected as an end in itself, not as a means to an end. Okay, example is that Paul W. Taylor argued that all living things are teleological centers of life that deserve rights and respect. A deontologist might argue an ecosystem has a right to exist, making its destruction wrong even if it provides human benefits. Okay, that is focus on duties and rules. Then focus on character. The guiding question, what would a wise, compassionate, and virtuous person do? Okay, how it works. This framework avoids calculating outcomes or rigid rules. Instead, it emphasizes cultivating virtues like respect, gratitude, amenity, and sensitivity towards nature, while avoiding vices like greed, arrogance, and apathy. Okay, connections. Ecofeminist thinkers like Val Plumwood argued this approach is more suitable for ecological diversity and more applicable to the views of indigenous peoples. Okay, this is focus on character. Okay, environmental ethics provides a powerful set of tools to think more clearly. The perspective cycles and reasoning methods lenses can be combined in many ways. Okay, ecosystems and ecosocialists can use consequentialism, arguing that preserving a wetland provides the best outcome for the entire biodiversity community. It leads to consequences, duties and rules, character and virtues. And again, like sentiment beings similarly leads to character and virtue. Then that means all are interconnected to each other. Then anthropocentриsts can use deontologists arguing we have a duty to protect resources for future generations. Okay, this circle is known as circles of concerns, and these frameworks are known as lenses for reasonings. Okay, these frameworks are enriched by other worldviews. Formal theories are just one part of the picture. Okay, applied theology. Many world religions, including Christianity, view humankind as stewards of a divine creature, providing a powerful motivation for care. This can be used to support conservation, John Muir, and at other times to justify resource consumption. Environmental pragmatism refuses to get stuck in purely philosophical debates, focusing instead on finding practical solutions that work for both humans and nature. Indigenous knowledge often embodies a deep, virtue-based ethic of reciprocity and respect for the natural world. Okay, let's revisit one of our initial questions. Should we clear-cut this forest? The framework does not give a simple yes or no, but helps us ask better questions. An anthropocentric conservationist might ask, do the economic benefits for our community produce the greatest good for the most people, outweighing the loss of resources for future generations? A biocentric dendrologist might ask, do the sentient animals in this forest have a right to their home that we have a duty not to violate regardless of the benefits? An ecologist virtue ethics might ask, is clearing this forest an act of arrogance, or does it demonstrate a virtuous and humble relationship with the land community? Okay, these are three different perspectives of asking questions regarding this. Okay, should we clear cut this forest? Okay, some philosophies suggest that Because humans are the only species that can secure the future of life on cosmological scales, our purpose is to secure and propagate that life. Okay, the quality of the future depends on the quality of our thinking today. That's all for today. If you have any doubt and query, just let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Thank you.